This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Great. So I think, Michael, whenever you're ready, feel free. You can start. We're at 4:01.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Michael Owens. I'm the procurement officer for the city of Easthampton. And with me today is Jeff Bagg. He's a member of the evaluation committee. Also with me is Greg Nuttleman, the DPW director. And we have two other members of the evaluation committee. Would those two people like to introduce themselves, please? City councilor first, if you like.
Sure, I'll go. My name's Salem Derby, and I am a city councilor. I'm also the chair of the ordinance committee. I'm also vice president of the city council.
Hi, I'm Megan Harvey. I'm a school committee member. I'm the secretary of the school committee, and I am the school committee rep for this group.
So those are the members of the evaluation committee. It's those two people, myself, procurement officer, Jeffrey Bagg, city planner, Greg Nuttleman, DPW director. This is a virtual interview that is open to the public this afternoon. I do want to caution the public, though, that there is no public speak at this meeting. You are welcome to listen. You are welcome to take notes. You are welcome to reach out to your city councilors after the meeting and relay any of your concerns or questions to those city councilors. However, there is no public speak at this meeting, and the meeting is exclusively for the evaluation committee members to hear the presentation of Wayfinders for their submitted proposal for school reuse. I think at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Wayfinders, ask them to introduce themselves and begin their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Keith Ferry. I'm the president and CEO of Wayfinders and really appreciate the opportunity to present our proposal to you today. I'm here with several of my colleagues from Wayfinders as well as our architecture team from the Narrowgate. We're going to introduce ourselves as we go along in the presentation, if that's all right with you, so we can go ahead and get started and have the full time allotted here for that presentation discussion. So I'm going to ask my colleague Ben Merker. He's going to be sharing our presentation, so he's going to go ahead and put that up and we'll go ahead and get started.
Just give me a second. Can you see the presentation? Or do you not see it yet?
Not yet.
Okay,
It says it's presenting, but it hasn't come all the way through yet.
Oh, okay. Do you see anything? Oh, so you should see my screen. Now do you see it? No?
Not
Hello?
yet. Not yet.
Okay,
No, we're seeing, Ben, I think we're seeing you presenting this screen that we're looking at.
So you're seeing...
We're seeing the screen of the Google Meet.
That is odd. Let me try one more time. Sorry. Here we go. Let's try a window. Here we go. This should work. Now you should be able to see it.
Thank you, Benjamin.
Yes, we can see it now. Perfect. Great.
And you're still seeing it, correct?
We're seeing it correct. Yeah.
Okay, great.
On the
There you
title
go.
slide. Thank you, Ben. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Thanks again for the opportunity. Let's go to the next slide, Ben. And again, I'm Keith Ferry. I'm the president and CEO of Wayfinders. And I'm going to take just a few minutes to introduce you and orient you to who we are as an organization. I think that's important to know who you might be getting involved with here in this project. Some of you know us from our work already in Easthampton, but we want to just take a minute to give you a sense of who we are as an organization, where we're coming from, and where we're going. Wayfinders was founded over 50 years ago as a housing allowance project. We were one of 10 demonstration projects for what became the federal Section 8 program. And through that, we were really focused on initially around housing affordability and housing stability for families in our region here in Western Massachusetts. Today, we are a comprehensive regional affordable housing and community development organization with a mission that's about building and advocating for an equitable and thriving region. And we do that through housing stability, economic mobility work, and developing and managing a wide range of housing supports. So that's who we are and what we've become as an organization. Today, we're 300 plus people strong, working throughout the region in rural communities, in urban communities, and suburban communities in Western Massachusetts. And we see ourselves as a community member, a responsive, an active, engaged community member working toward this mission. So Ben, if we can go to the next slide, please. In terms of the work that we do today, we work across the housing continuum from homelessness to home ownership. And you'll see here in this slide, we try to kind of condense all the work that we do into just this one slide. But I'll talk us through it for a moment. From homelessness, we work to provide emergency shelter to over 200 homeless families in the region. Related to rental assistance, where we started, we provide rental vouchers to over 6,000 families, households in our region. We provide emergency financial assistance, which has been critical to keep housing stable for many families of various incomes throughout the pandemic. And in Easthampton alone, over the last 2.5 years, we've helped over 200 families with about $1.2 million to keep housed during the pandemic and to ward off any challenges or concern around eviction. We are a housing consumer education center for Hampden and Hampshire County, where anyone can walk into our front door or call us on the phone or connect to us over the internet to ask housing questions and get housing supports, whether it's if you're a homeowner, a renter, a landlord, or anyone concerned with a housing issue. We help folks navigate the housing system and get to the solutions that they need. We also provide resident services and engagement work in the properties that we own and manage. And then we do community leadership and development work in the communities where we work. In addition to that, we provide assistance to folks who are having trouble finding jobs, connecting them to employment and training that they need to improve their economic outcomes. And then we do advocacy work, both on the individual level related to fair housing, and then policy advocacy work to help the systems work better to meet the needs of people and communities in our region. In addition to all of that work on the program side, we are an active and engaged real estate development and property and asset management organization. I'll talk about our property and asset management work in a moment, but today we manage over 23 properties for 800 plus units in Western Massachusetts. And our real estate development history is long. We've developed over 1,300 units over a period of time, ranging from homeownership to affordable projects to mixed income projects and mixed use projects throughout Western Mass. Today, we're developing projects in Great Barrington, Agawam, South Hadley, Holyoke, Amherst, and Springfield, just to name a few. In addition to that work, we have a subsidiary called Common Capital. It's a community development financial institution that works with small business owners to help capitalize them, to provide them with technical assistance and supports to develop their businesses and help support them in creating jobs in communities. So that's who we are as an organization. That's the comprehensive approach we bring to our work in every community that we work in. Next slide, please, ma'am. So, and these are just some of our accomplishments. I'm not going to go through all these, but it just speaks to the reach that we have. The top number there, just talking about in fiscal year 22, over 46,000 households we touched in one way or another through our work. We also help many people, as I mentioned, with emergency financial assistance, bringing $90 million in total over the last year to the region to help landlords and people who are struggling paying the rent, keep them housed. And throughout our history, we've provided assistance to thousands of people trying to become homeowners, including residents of Easthampton and many communities in the surrounding area, from everything from first-time homebuyer assistance to credit success and financial management support, and even foreclosure assistance or prevention work that we do. So we really work across homeownership as well as rental housing. And as I mentioned, we do work with small businesses as well through our subsidiary. Go ahead and on to the next slide to talk a little bit more about our property management and resident services. As you all hopefully know, we are the owner and manager and developer, along with Valley CDC, of Parsons Village in Easthampton, which we developed back in 2015. It's a 38-unit family housing project. And we see ourselves through all the work that we do in working communities and working on projects like Parsons. We see our work through a long-term lens. So we just don't come in to develop and leave, but we become a community member. We are a community member, and we use an integrated approach to real estate development and property management. That means our property management team is at the table with us when we're considering projects, using their experience and knowledge, and both good and bad with projects that they're operating, to provide us with insights in what makes for a good project, both from a social experience for residents, from a structural experience in terms of operating and managing the project, and from a financial experience from long-term operations. So we try to integrate all of that knowledge and experience into each of our development projects. And in fact, I feel it gets better every time as we do a new project. We have greater learnings that we bring to bear from our property and asset management team. Going to go ahead and on to the next slide, please, Ben. Our property management team is vast, but these are some of the leaders from our team and people who are already engaged in your community. Faith Williams, who's a long-term leader of our property and asset management team. Robert Ortiz, who helps her manage the team, and then our property manager at Parson Village, Jasmine Valentin. Next slide, please. In addition to property and asset management, we also provide resident services to our residents on site. So that enables residents to come with concerns to resident service coordinators, where we can connect them either to programs and services that Wayfinders provides or programs and services provided in communities around the region. We find that this is often a key element in creating long-term housing stability for folks who may not know where to turn when something goes wrong or when there's a challenge that they haven't faced before. And so by providing these resident services, we provide longer stability and greater stability for our families, for the projects that we develop and manage, and we think for the communities in which we work. So that's why we're committed to providing resident services at Parsons Village. Not only do we have, you see here in the picture, as many of you know, there's not only the residential units, but there's kind of a common building here with a property and asset management office where we can provide, and also a community room, a laundry room, and that is something we try to replicate either as a standalone or within each of our projects, so that there is space for engagement and with not only our property and asset management staff, but our resident service staff and with tenants, with each other and other community members. So with that, I'm going to conclude just talking about who we are as an organization, so we get into the details of this proposal and see how you can see how we're bringing that learning and experience into the work that we've been doing for years in the community. So if we go to the next slide, Ben, please. So my colleagues, Ben Merker, James Gruber, and John Gilbert will take the proposal overview section from here, and then we'll have the folks from the Narrowgate talk about the design.
Thanks, Keith. And thanks again to the selection committee for the opportunity to discuss Wayfinders' proposal. Our proposal meets and exceeds many of this town's requirements and goals for the site. I'm going to briefly highlight some of the specific areas of the proposal now. We've assembled a team internally and externally with the expertise to meet these goals, including the Narrowgate architecture we'll present later today. The Narrowgate is one of the most experienced designers of affordable housing in the state and is extremely sensitive to community process in its approach. As Keith mentioned, affordable housing is in the core of our mission, and this proposal is yet another representation of this. Our development would include a total of 54 new homes in a newly constructed building on the Maple Street school site that will reference both the current architecture while making it more accessible to all and align better with both the commercial and residential surrounding neighborhood. 38 units will be affordable, 16 units will be market rate, and 20 of those 38 affordable units will be subsidized to make them affordable to those who are considered extremely low income. Wayfinders' property and asset management team will provide on-site management and resident services. Our proposal also includes many community amenities, from public parking to a new and improved playground to a community room to be used by all. In addition, as will be explained further by our architectural team, our new construction development design is environmentally responsive and energy efficient. As you may have seen in our proposal, it includes the one school site at Maple and Chapel Street. Our experience from this region has taught us a lot about this and informs all of our decision-making when responding to proposals such as this one. With one building, our return on investment of having one building versus many was important to consider. We are able to provide more by concentrating our resources to make the best product for the city and for Wayfinders, and most importantly, for the future tenants and neighborhoods of this site. In addition, we are extremely invested in Easthampton. We are already invested in Easthampton. We wanted to contribute and add to this housing mix and saw this as the best opportunity to focus on one site to maximize units and create an affordable and mixed income approach. Overall, given the flexibility of this RFP, we decided to focus on the one opportunity and create a proposal that had the highest and best use for something that made sense for the city and Wayfinders while ensuring that what we proposed we could actually complete. As you will see later on, our proposal includes the demolition of the existing structure. We initially looked at retaining the building with new construction as an add-on. A lot of the hangups that came with that, though, was the existing building conditions and site conditions and layout. This includes the difficulty with the basement spaces relative to grade and handicapped accessibility. In addition, with rehab comes more uncertainty of costs and conditions, even with the current diligence we have on file. In the end, we decided on our approach because we wanted this new development to fit into the neighborhood and create a highest and best use proposal. Our architectural team will discuss our decision a bit more in detail later in the presentation. But even though our proposal plans in a demolition of the current structure, we did consider the architecture and site layout of the current building when developing a new design. Our mix, as you can see here, has 4 tiers, and this mix represents our goal to make our developments inclusive for all people and to not segregate those who need affordable housing into one specific site. Our community amenities will be useful for the city, neighborhood residents, both commercial and residential, children to more senior members of the community, as well as organizations throughout the area through the use of the community room. We will provide public parking, with some spots being electric given the direction that automobiles are heading. On the site, we will be installing bicycle racks for those that live in the building, but also those who visit the site for its great amenities. Our proposal also includes a new and improved park and playground. It is intentionally set on the corner of Chapel and Maple to encourage all in the community to use it. In addition, as with most of our developments, we will have a community room. Here at this site, it would allow for those in the community to use it as well for different events. Finally, we would work with the city to ensure that there would be updated and safe pedestrian connections to this area. Overall, just like the school, we want this development to bring all people in the community together to enjoy the atmosphere and amenities. With all these amenities, we look forward to working with the city and its partners in order to find a plan that works best for all. We would expect to come up with an agreement that incorporated the expectations of Wayfinders and the city to ensure that these amenities are accessible for the community as well as make sense for the city and neighborhood. Our state-of-the-art new building will include an environmental certification such as LEED and or Passive House. The decision on which would come later in our design development depending on our further due diligence. In addition, this building would follow and meet the Enterprise Green Community standards and practices. And in addition, the current design also takes into account the area. Our design has a low impact landscape plan. And finally, another unique part of our proposal is that Wayfinders will also be the property and asset manager, as Keith mentioned earlier, as well as provide extensive resident services. This team would provide an on-site presence being supported by regional and executive level staff providing services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This also points out that our approach is fully Wayfinders and is a well-rounded recommendation given our expertise regionally in real estate development and property and asset management, as well as resident services. Next, I'd like to pass it off to my colleague, John Gilbert, to discuss more of the design aspects of our proposal.
Thanks, Ben, and thanks to the selection committee here for the opportunity and time this afternoon. John Gilbert here, project manager with Wayfinders. I'm going to walk us through some of these conceptual design features that our proposal has in a little bit greater detail while providing context for the narrow gate to follow up afterwards and get into the sort of nitty gritty of our design proposal. So from sort of a broad stroke overview, what we are proposing here is 54 total new build units. This is going to be broken down into 1s, 2s, and 3 bedrooms. As you can see, the 1 bedrooms are weighted slightly more heavily across our unit mix. And on a future slide, I'll get into some of the breakdowns of the AMI and affordability of those 54 units. With that said, we also are offering a mixed income proposal here that allows us to present 16 market rate units, which is 30% of our overall proposal of 54 units. Again, these would be market rate. 38, the remaining 38 units would be affordable income restricted units that would occupy 70% of our overall unit count. So in addition to our unit distribution, we have extensive community amenities We've got almost 1,000 square foot community room that we're proposing on the ground level of level 1. The architects will get into sort of where that's located in greater detail, but in the rendering that we can see off to the left, it's right beyond the public playground that is centered with the existing tree here, right in the foreground of our design. That community room is being proposed to have accessibility both to residents of the building, but also general public. So we would allow the general public to have, various programming events, basically trying to create a design here that would allow community members and public members alike to filter in the site and, feel connected to this redevelopment scheme that we're coming up with. We also have a community park and a playground in the rear courtyard of the building that we'll see in greater detail again as the architects step in and walk through the design. We have some raised garden beds that we're proposing back there for residents of the building to have access to, as well as 14 public parking spaces that are located both along Chapel and Maple Street. A significant number of those would have EV charging stations. And these 14 public parking spaces, again, amongst Maple and Chapel, are in addition to 54 private parking spaces that we're proposing to the rear of the building site, which would create a 1-to-1 ratio for all units proposed. As Keith spoke to, we have extensive on-site services for asset and property management and on-site supportive services in our projects. That's something that we have created space for in this project as well. And as Ben alluded to, we are proposing Passive House and/or LEED certification for this project. The Narrowgate, who is the architecture firm, again, that we'll be hearing from shortly, has experience in passive house design. We are currently holding a solar PV array across the 3rd story portion of the building. And again, we'll see more of this in greater detail. Next slide, please. So taking a look at our preliminary apartment income mix here, this gives us a breakdown of both the income levels across 1, 2, and 3 beds, as well as the market rates across 1, 2, and 3 beds. As mentioned previously, we have 30% of our units dedicated towards market rentals. And our goal here is really to create a mixed income project where we can recognize both the economic and the social benefits through this design and not segregate all affordable units into one building proposal here. So those 30% market units are generally distributed equally across the 1, 2, and 3 beds, slightly weighted towards the 1 bed offering in this case. 30%, 60, and 80 AMIs, as we can see, sort of break down. And the general mix, as I mentioned earlier, is weighted towards both 1 beds most heavily, as well as within the 30% AMI income group. And that would be the lowest household income level bracket. And, we will get in actually, I think in the next slide, to some of the details of what those income levels are so that everyone sort of has a better understanding of, what the income limits would be and, sort of the tendency that we're striving to offer these units for here. Generally, our bedroom and our income mix, as we're looking at here, is driven by a goal to support and create opportunities for families as well as individuals of all ages and abilities, again, including, single individuals towards those 1-bedroom units at 20 total counts. So 70%, as I mentioned, are income restricted, and more than 60% of our overall 54 units are dedicated towards 2 and 3 bedrooms, so towards families. Next slide, please. So as we can see on this slide, we have the income breakdown of what 30, 60, and 80% AMI, area median income limits are. For the 30% for a 1 person, that would be very low income at $19,800, leading up to a family of 4, also at the 30% of $28,250. 80% AMI is typically referred to as workforce housing, and we are providing a variety of units across that as well. So just for some context, at 60% AMI for a family of 4 in our region, that would be $56,460 which is the equivalent of a full-time wage earner, as we have noted here, at 27 an hour, or a couple averaging half of that, which would be, $13.60. For reference, the 2018 median household income from the housing production plan for Easthampton was $59,604. So obviously, some time has passed since then, but as a point of comparison, that was median household income that falls generally towards our 4-person household of 60% AMI as a point of reference. Next slide, please. We have our preliminary rents structured here. 30% AMI typically falls to 30% of income across any of those bedroom counts. 60% AMI and 80% AMI numbers are also provided here for context, as well as market rentals that we have pulled from CoStar. I have a note on here that these market rates are current estimates. They'll be updated based on future trends that we see. I think it's worthy to note that in some cases, the AMI, which is sort of the Springfield area, which captures Easthampton as well, has some slightly higher rents than the market rate. And that's simply because the market rate information that we pulled was sort of specific to Easthampton, again, from CoStar, from market data, whereas the AMI is more generalized across the region. So with that being said, the market rate numbers will certainly adjust, but the AMI numbers are based on, of course, income, and that provides direction for our state and federal LIHTC funding. Next slide, please. From this point forward, I'd like to pass it along to our architecture team, the Narrowgate, to walk us through the design proposal in some greater detail.
Thanks, John. I'm Bob Wegener, founding principal at the Narrowgate. And I'd like to introduce my colleagues, Joe Lambert and Wendy Richter, to you. They'll be helping me to present the design today. At the Narrowgate, we've been designing affordable housing throughout Massachusetts for over 36 years now. We're mission driven. This is what we do. This is what we love to do. It's what we were founded to do, to serve nonprofit organizations like Wayfinders to create well-designed, resident-centered, energy-efficient buildings, and primarily for underserved communities. We're also actually working with Wayfinders on another project in Amherst right now. It's a 2-site, 72-unit project. The team was selected by the town of Amherst recently, and we're now in the design phase for that project. Also wanted to let you know that we have long-standing experience throughout the state of Massachusetts as design reviewers for DHCD. We're one of 5 firms that do that throughout the state, so we know what the design standards are. We know what it takes to get project funding through DHCD. So Joe's going to start our presentation on the proposed design. You want to take it away, Joe?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. We can jump to the next slide. I'll start off presenting site circulation and parking. So 2 driveway entrances facilitate easy movement through the site. You'll see one on the Chapel Street side of the site and one on the Maple side. And these are placed as far as possible from the intersection to reduce any possible congestion around the area. We also laid out the site thinking about parking as a primary design goal. We fit 68 total spaces in this plan as outlined by John earlier. You'll also see in this drawing additional crosswalks that improve pedestrian access around the site. And John also mentioned these earlier. As far as landscaping moves, we're providing generous green space at the perimeter of the site that soften the presence of the new building in the buffer areas along Maple Street and along the one-way drive. So that's to the north and the east in the image you're looking at. Furthermore, preserving and celebrating the existing landmark tree at the front of the site is a key component to our overall design. In the next slides, we'll continue to look at building floor plans first, but we will return back to some of the outdoor community spaces you're seeing here. So we can jump to the next slide, please, Ben. And on the right-hand side, you're again seeing the ground floor plan. Largely, our building footprint coincides with that of the current school. The main building entrances can be found at 3 points around the lobby, which is the teal space in the center of the building. One entrance is on Maple Street, one is on Chapel Street, one is at the rear parking lot, and all of these entrances feed into a large light-filled lobby space, which serves common use space for the residents, including administrative space that Wayfinders will inhabit, a community room, mail room, etc., as well as the vertical circulation. So 2 elevators and a stair will be centrally located in that lobby. On the left of the screen here, you'll see the basement plan. We incorporated a partial basement to balance minimal excavation, but also maximize valuable daylit space above grade. So we'll go to the upper floor plans next. So here are the second and third floor plans. And as John mentioned earlier, more than 60% of the units are 2 and 3 bedroom units. All 54 units in the project are based on DHCD requirements. And the provision of elevators ensure that all units are visitable in addition to those that are fully accessible. And because we have 2 elevators in these plans, there's a greater sense of reliability for those purposes. You'll notice here that windows are placed at corridor ends to give views out of the building and make connections to the outdoors. So we're daylighting the spaces as much as we can. Go to the next slide. On the roof plans, there's a few interesting things here. We're obviously thinking about sustainability and meeting the design requirements, whether it's passive house or LEED, but we are showing PV panels on the roof. We're also showing a change in height here. So you'll notice that the 4th floor plan is not a full 4th floor, and that's something we'll talk about later. Next slide. Let's see. Overall, the plans that we looked at just now were developed to maximize high quality, affordable housing. Lots of natural light, good quality spaces, accessibility. We also wanted to promote a strong sense of community within the neighborhood. And in the end, it looked like replacing the school building rather than keeping it strengthened these goals. So what you're seeing here is an overlap with the 2 buildings. The existing school building is pink, and the proposed new building is gray. And Wendy's going to talk more about this image and the benefits of our approach.
Sorry, you're muted. I don't know if you have the control to unmute yourself.
I do.
Okay.
So sorry about that. So what you're seeing here is the old school with the new proposed school behind it. And the height and mass of the proposed building is similar to that of the old school, though the school has only 2.5 floors, while the new building is 4 floors in this elevation. The tall ceiling heights in the school allow only 2 floors above grade, and it limited the unit count. Basement spaces in the existing school are mostly below grade and were of poor quality and would have resulted in units that were uncomfortable and not handicapped accessible. The new construction has 3 and 4-story elements. This doubles the number of units possible from the existing 2.5-story school. The decision to pursue demolition and build new was rooted in maximizing the potential of the site by improving public amenities with new landscaping and significantly increasing the potential number of units developed. So you can go on to the next slide. This image shows a rendering of the new proposed building from the same perspective that you saw on the previous slide. While the existing school was a monolithic brick building, the proposed building has 3 differentiated elements to break down the overall size. The 4-story brick element highlights the corner and refers back to the character of the old school building. The red brick walls will be familiar to the neighborhood and anchor the community playground and park at the corner. The 4th floor of the Chapel Street wing, which is what you see on the right side of this slide, is set back. The 4th floor is set back to reduce the scale of the building. The 3-story eave line lessens the apparent building height in response to the smaller scaled residential neighborhood context. You can go to the next slide. So this slide is a view from the corner of Holyoke and Cottage with a historic home in the foreground. The four-story wing on Chapel Street appears in the background and is very similar to the existing school in size. As a school site, this location has been a transition between the commercial streetscape and residential neighborhood. The design of the new building makes a similar transition. Go to the next slide. The two wings were carefully designed to respond to the surrounding context through materials and scale. The use of lap siding gives a more residential feel and character to the wings. Articulated bays also bring a more residential scale to these elevations. Surrounded by 2.5-story wood frame residences, the Maple Street wing, which is the one on the upper left, steps down to 3 stories and is set back from the street to align with the neighboring houses. The 4-story wing on Chapel Street, which is on the right side, responds to the increased density and activity along Cottage Street. The corner red brick section of the building evokes the old school and will be complemented by the painted clapboard wings. The corner itself will act as a new community landmark, inviting public interaction at the playground, the park, and the community room. Bob will continue with the talk of the relationship between the building and the community spaces.
Thanks, Wendy. So community happens on multiple levels. It can happen in a family, it can happen within a building, and it can happen within a neighborhood or just being part of a city. So just like the Wayfinders logo here, you can see that what Wayfinders has been a part of is serving families, building neighborhoods, and building community. But people need a place to gather to build community. Spaces need to be provided for opportunities for resident interaction. Let's talk a little bit about creating community within the building. The design includes welcoming entries and lobby, a community room that you've heard about, raised bed gardens at the south-facing patio, and eyes on the courtyard and the parking that are also important to people feeling connected, feeling safe. The outdoor resident patio on the south side is set in a landscaped open space, and it includes gardening opportunities and would inevitably see lots of foot traffic, both for use of that space and coming back and forth between the parking and the entry on that side. The indoor community space is a community room at the corner that you've heard about that faces out onto the new park area, and it would be accessible to both residents and the neighborhood, as we've heard. We want to create a sense of place for residents that brings a new kind of vibrancy to the site and can be seen as a desirable place for people to call home in Easthampton. Let's go to the next slide, please. So creating community within a neighborhood. A hallmark of our proposal is the playground and patio at the prominent corner of the site. The design welcomes the neighborhood into this corner. The playground is sited under the shade of an existing landmark tree. You can't miss this tree if you've gone by the site, and is surrounded by a proposed seating wall that serves as a safety barrier as well as an inviting public entry into the park, which is connected to the new crosswalks that you see here. The park also includes a patio area extending from the ground floor level community room, and it will connect the indoor and outdoor spaces for the community. And the large existing tree that we've talked about stands at the corner of the site, and it will shade a proposed community playground intended for public use. So the corner here, the corner of Maple and Chapel, is the most visible front-facing part of this site. And it's been designed to carry forward the history of this site with its cultural and educational significance that is significant for the residents of Easthampton. It's been there for a long time. So our intent is to continue to share this space with the wider community. We understand that this history of the school and the personal connections to this site are important to the residents of Easthampton. So we've created a welcoming design for a new energy efficient building that references that community history. now like to pass it back to the Wayfinders team to talk about timeline and next steps for the project.
All right. Hello, my name is Jamie Gruber, member of the Real Estate Development Department here at Wayfinders and a resident of Easthampton. And I'd like to thank the selection committee for all the hard work that you're doing and will continue to do on this. I think this is this is really great for the town. And the last part of our presentation, I'm going to speak to our proposal's anticipated development timeline and give a better sense of the engagement that you and the other stakeholders can expect from our team. Wayfinders is committed to promptly jumping into due diligence and design after a developer designation. We have our own development capital fund that enables us to begin investing in this work right away. We would select our architectural engineering design partners, legal team, and work with the city to formalize the purchase and sale agreement. We anticipate completing this preliminary work by the fall of this year, at which point we would begin to further the design development of the proposal concept. We anticipate the schematic design and permitting documents being completed in the spring of 2024, allowing Wayfinders the ability to submit to the plan approval process with the goal of having the development permitted in early fall of 2024. To answer the committee's question, we anticipate taking control of the site once it's permitted in September or October of next year, 2024. This schedule would allow Wayfinders to apply to the Department of Housing Community Development funding pre-application in the fall of 2024 for their annual funding round process. The state funding process typically takes several months, and at a minimum we would expect to extend through 2025. Based on previous experience, Wayfinders anticipates the earliest a funding award would occur would most likely be in January of 2026. The financing and closing process to fund the development would take approximately 9 months following the funding award, placing the start of construction in early fall of 2026. The estimated time for construction would be approximately 18 months, and based upon this schedule, we feel the development could be as ready for lease up and occupancy as early as late spring or early summer of 2028. And at that, we'll stop there, and we look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Wayfinders. That was I really did enjoy that. That was a great presentation. Again, thanks to Wayfinders, their staff, and their consultant, Narrowgate. We appreciate your time and efforts in completing this presentation for us this afternoon. I want to defer to other committee members and see if anyone has questions. These are evaluation committee members. Anyone? Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your time to present to us. Appreciate it. We didn't practice this part. We didn't know who was going to ask any follow-up questions, so people are being a little shy. But you covered, so we did present the questions ahead of time to all the respondents, just to be clear on that. I had two just quick, I guess I had just detailed type questions. If you could try to elaborate on any information about the property tax that you would anticipate the proposal to generate. We did see it in the proposal, so it's on, it does talk about it on page 44 a little bit, but I was just hoping somebody could just elaborate on that a little bit. And then just confirming, we had a question about CPA funds and just any anticipated timeline to access that. And maybe it hinges on your application to DHCD, but maybe if you could just give us a little glimpse at that, those two questions, that would help.
Yeah, Jeff, appreciate it. I'd be happy to answer those too. So the property tax information, as you referenced, we have there in the RFP, and through the pro forma, we're tracking a 3% property tax and escalation at 1,000 per unit. So in the first year, that would be 54,000 at 54 units. Tracking that across the 20-year financial analysis that we have would result in, I think, 1.45, just under 1.5 million to the city. I think it's also worth noting that as part of the 40R, there would also be some benefit to the city. And I believe that is, trying to think, it would come out to, let me see, I have the note somewhere, 162,000. That's what it is, 162,000 across the 54 units that we're proposing. So that would be, an incentive sort of bonus. Also, since we're talking about financing, just the one other point to note is, as part of the elementary building annual operations document that was circulated, the Maple Street School, I believe, had a $60,000 per year expense sort of attached to it. So, that would be something that we would, be relieving, of course, the city with through taking ownership. The other question regarding the CPA funds, of which we stated 500,000 as a potential ask, we would ideally like to unlock that in the first quarter of 2024 if we received the award for this project site. That would allow us to pursue our due diligence phase, our pre-development work, really working with architecture, engineering, and again, providing those pre-development services. That would additionally provide us with context going into a pre-application for the DHCD submission in the fall of that year to really just, how do I say this, promote the buy-in of the community from a financial standpoint, which would benefit, our application at that point in time. So that would be occurring Q1 of 2024 with the expectation that we would be submitting that pre-app post-award of CPA funds in the fall of 2024.
Just to underscore that last point that John was making there, our experiences at DHCD and I think around the state views that local contribution very favorably in terms of advancing applications more quickly in the process. Just wanted to underscore that point.
Any follow-up, Jeff?
No follow-up. Thank you.
Any other committee members have questions for folks from Wayfinders and/or Irongate? I have one question. Can you expand a little on tenant selection and lease up? Do you use the state subsidized housing list? Do you do local outreach for tenants? How would you, if the city asked you to reach out to local businesses, how would you go about offering housing slots to local low income or income eligible service persons?
Sure. Thank you for that question. And specific to tenant selection, there are things that we do have to follow the state requires in terms of a tenant selection and lottery process. We do extensive outreach when we do that. The last project we leased up was in Holyoke, actually. We had 1,500 applicants for 38 units. So it's very extensive in terms of both information sessions that we do in the community to provide people with information about the project, online sessions as well, so people who are not able to attend in person. And so we start that process quite early in terms of making sure we have the right engagement and knowledge and an awareness of the project and opportunities there. Specific to in terms of any community preference, we have worked with different communities on levels of community preference for residents of the given community. While we think that there should be, there certainly is, from our experience, people in Easthampton who would meet the requirements here, and many who would need even some of the lowest income housing to get housing stability. So we would welcome the opportunity to talk with you about that. We would have to work within the guise of what's allowed through the state, but we have plenty of experience working in different communities around community preference requirements.
Thank you, Keith. Are there any other questions from committee members? Does anyone on your team have any questions for the city?
Well, I wanted to first thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you today and for the opportunity to submit our proposal. I think for us, we're interested in knowing how you will move forward from here. I know it's kind of what your expectations are. I know certain timelines are hard to keep to, given all the process that you need to go through. But we'd love to just hear a little bit about your expectation there and any follow up that you might need from us.
I think that our expectation is that by probably the third full week of April, certainly the last week of April, we will have a top choice that we will transmit to the City Council. I will poll evaluation committee members to see if they have any follow-up written questions that we may submit to you, Keith, and your team for a written response. Would that be possible?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. Any follow-up that you need, we're happy to meet it, whether it's from a financing, design, timeline, or any other aspects relative to any aspect of both developing the project or operating it long term.
Sure. After we conclude today, I'll reach out to the committee members, just offer that opportunity for written questions to Wayfinders and follow up to the presentation this afternoon. I just want to say again, I'm sorry, Jeff's got a hand up.
Sorry, Michael. You were definitely closing it down, and that's good. I would be remiss. I had one more question, and it's not necessarily an easy one, but it was on the list, and I just wanted to air it out a little bit because I think it is something that we will be asking the other respondents. So it's, if you were selected as the preferred developer, can you describe how you might respond to discussions with City Council about sort of your willingness or flexibility to just massage the plan a little bit? And I'm not suggesting it has to be massaged, but if it were to come up, just understanding your willingness to talk about the such as like the features that are in the playground or the location. And then of course, the location at Maple Street is going to draw questions and concerns about public parking. And we see your plan, but just understanding how you might approach that if you were selected as a preferred developer. I did want to air that one out because it's going to be a question that will come up along the way.
Thank you. And this team, Bob mentioned, we're working together in Amherst, which was a response to an RFP. And in that regard, we had to respond to some changes and adjustments that the town requested there. So we totally understand that. We actually would welcome it. This is an opportunity where we put forward a proposal, we're helpful to get a favorable reaction and response from you all on it, but we expect that there is some important give and take and around the proposal and what we're putting forward here. And so we would welcome that opportunity to hear more direct insight and see and create some reasonable solutions for any recommendations around adjustments to any parts of our design. So we are not fixed in that regard. There are some things that, need to work from a financing perspective, or may need to work from a design perspective to keep the integrity of what we're talking about. But I think we could come to some common understanding around that. Bob, I don't know if you want to speak to anything about how your experience in working on that, even in Amherst with us or any other place. Bob, you're on mute.
Mute.
Thanks, Keith. Yes, we certainly have ideas about, and we've presented some of those today. And architects have ideas, right? That's what we're about. It's our world. But it's not good design if it's not something that doesn't come out of the process with the residents, with the town. So we as Keith said, we welcome it. It's an important part of the design process. So we encourage you to think of this as the conceptual or preliminary design, and the process would then go from there, whether it's the playground, whether it's parking, all those things we need to hear from you folks about it. This is our initial sense of things, but it really needs your involvement.
Right. And just one last point, if I could make there, all of this is informed by, yes, our collective experiences as our team brings here. And that includes, experience over the years and experience working real time in today's marketplace in terms of the cost of construction, the new latest in design in terms of passive house and other sustainable design. So all that's informed by that today. We're working on 4 or 5 projects right now in the region. So we have, I think, a really good handle on that. We're actively engaged with contractors and bidding these projects out. So I feel like we have a really strong handle on what it's going to cost to build something like this. And to provide a quality asset and a quality resource for the community for years to come. And that's what we're trying to bring forth here.
That's great. Thank you. I'm glad I asked the question and I appreciate your answers. It was really helpful. I really do genuinely think that you went through the list that we had. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, Salem?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a question. I think what I was going to say kind of echoes what Jeff said, which was thank you for giving us a thorough presentation that did answer all the questions that we had kind of come up with. You made my life a little easier not having to ask questions. So I just want to say thanks for that. And I also want to say that, I'm coming from a place of appreciation that you would take the time and the effort and the resources to put together a plan for this space in Easthampton. So I just wanted to appreciate that as well. So thanks for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from committee members or questions from presenter team? Keith?
I think we're good on our end, unless my colleagues have something else that they want to put forward.
Okay. I just want to thank you again, Keith, your team from Wayfinders and your consultant team from Narrowgate. I haven't been in the Valley here for quite a number of years doing economic and community development. I know Wayfinders does fine work in the Valley. You're a valuable resource for us all. So again, thank you for your time this afternoon. We appreciate it. And we will be in contact with follow-up written questions. And again, I think by the end of April, we'll have our ranked listing to the City Council.
Terrific. Thank you all.
Thanks again, everyone. Jeff?
End of March. Did you say the end of April? You meant the end of
I'm sorry, the end of April.
End of April.
March, right? Right.
We can try for the end of March.
Well, we'll take either one.
As soon as we have a decision, you'll know our decision.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great
Appreciate it.
afternoon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.